Folks, hello and welcome to week 4. It's hard to believe we're halfway through the term already. I would just want to say thank you for all the great work that I have seen so far. And certainly I hope you're enjoying the course and it's offering you some perspective on some of the basic concepts of mathematics and statistics and their value in both our professional and personal lives. We're going to continue that theme this week here in Module 4, exploring functions and data. And I will have a little bit more to say about functions as we get towards the end of the video here. But let's get kicked off with looking at the learning objectives this week. So we've already talked about data. So the next step in talking about data is identifying flawed statistical claims. And all of us have, whether we're out purchasing a car or shopping at the grocery store, or maybe even watching our favorite sporting event, we see statistics that will certainly make us scratch our heads. And as we continue our study in really looking at some of these basic ideas of mathematics and statistics and how they apply in our daily lives, certainly scratching our head when we see things that don't seem to make sense is something that we ought to be doing. So a little bit more of that this week, certainly, as we start or we continue to talk about data. And then interpret daily life problems using both linear and exponential models. And again, I will talk more about this idea of models and functions as we get towards the end of the video here. Week 4 assignments, as is customary, 2 activities in Zybooks, both the participation activity and the challenge activity. We will have another discussion post this week, aimed towards misleading statistics. And then your quiz this week will focus on both functions and data. Down here in the, the bottom left-hand corner, last week or during week 3, you worked on your proposal, and I will make sure that those are graded and back to you by the middle of this week so that everybody is tracking my comments to you and where certainly I would like for you to either make some adjustments or keep moving in the same direction to make sure that your project is on target here. Nothing really happening this week formally, but obviously you should continue to work on the projects. And I just wanted to remind everyone that next week during week 5, we'll be looking for a project draft. And make sure that you are using the template that is provided in my courses. That is certainly something that will be valuable to you as you start putting together the final product. Speaking of the final product, that will be due during week 7. And then you will have a reflection opportunity during week 8, which will be your opportunity. Obviously, the value of the project in the context of the course is really, the capstone element. And, considering all the work that you will have done on your project and everything that we have done in the course, that will be a good opportunity for you to sit down and put some thoughts on paper and really help you put the course in perspective. So that will be a good opportunity during week 8 to reflect and understand the value and the impact of this material, again, on both your personal and professional lives. So what I wanted to do over here, again, I've kind of broken up this bottom right portion of the quad chart here. There's 2 things that I want to do again over here. I want to, again, introduce the basics of what's happening here in week 4, and then, again, make sure that we're thinking about where we've been and how we continue to weave all these things together to create a better quantitative foundation for us, both on the basic algebra side and the basic statistics side. So let's start with, I've got this hooked up here. Let's go over and take a look at what's going on in Zybooks. And if I had to, actually, let me say it this way. I don't think there's anything more valuable or more important in mathematics than the idea of a mathematical function. And again, as we close out this video, we will make a strong connection between the idea of a mathematical function and a mathematical model, and the importance of those. I'm actually going to show you a short YouTube video after I take a quick spin through the Zybooks here. So we certainly want to pay attention to this idea of a function, what it is. And as we go through this activity, there is any number of types of functions, whether it be from math or from trigonometry or any other discipline. But we're going to focus on a couple this week, one being a linear function and the other being an exponential function. And so as you go through these assignments in Zybooks, you'll certainly start with the idea of a linear function and then some examples, and then we'll move on. But again, something else to point out here, there's a variety of different ways to express a function. You can do it through a table, or what we would really consider a set of ordered pairs, or it can also be done graphically. Most typically, we will see it done in terms of what looks like an equation. But certainly we want to be mindful of all this as we go through this activity in Zybooks. And again, this idea, so we're going to talk a little bit more about modeling, but again, we want to make this clear connection between the idea of a function and a mathematical model and the value of a mathematical model, both in the linear aspect and the exponential aspect. So let's just look at, just very quickly, let's just look at when we talk about something that is linear, what are we really talking about? And as you will see, if you look at a set of data, while it's not a perfect straight line, it could resemble a straight line. So if we had some sort of mathematical equation that related, what happens from year to year and the money spent on, let's see, in billions of dollars on whatever, maybe it's Netflix here. I think we probably all can appreciate the amount of money we pay for either cable and our streaming services, and how that continues to increase every year. So we can look at models in that regard. Again, this line graph from year to year obviously is, or it can be assessed in a linear fashion. And then let me just kind of go back here. And then if we were looking for maybe an average change in the, number of ED visits, emergency department visits, we could certainly look at an average over time using a linear model. But that's all going to be discussed this week as you go through Zybooks. And let's see a little bit more about linear functions here. So whenever we see data that falls graphically in a straight line, obviously that's very easy to model with a linear equation. And more good examples here. And there was one for sure. So as we start talking about the idea of a break-even point, and there are a number of good examples, you will see how the linear equation or the linear model allows us to work in that space as well. Let me get beyond the linear functions here and just quickly point out, obviously you can see there's a lot of good stuff happening here. What is the difference between a linear function and an exponential function? Let me just show you graphically here. We know that when we talk about a linear function, we're looking at something that's really something that is being modeled or something that's being expressed in a straight line. And as you start looking at some of these curves here in what looks like the first quadrant of the XY plane, they are clearly not linear. And neither is every set of data that we're going to look at. And that's why we often look at a variety of different functions when we get into this modeling business. So, and here's another great example. So as we start talking about functions in Zybooks, we certainly want to make the distinction between linear functions and exponential functions this week, and why they're different and why they they're valuable to us. I want to show you very quickly. This is a 3-minute YouTube video on mathematical modeling. And after this is done, I will try to tie this up in the perspective. But let's take a look at this YouTube video very quickly. Okay, I I hope that was valuable in the sense of as we look again, as we tie together this idea of models and functions, everything that those students were talking about in terms of a mathematical model is done with a mathematical function, and that they talked about equations a couple of times as well. So that is certainly the parallel that we want to draw here. That when we talk about functions we're talking about tools that allow us to model. One of the things that I wanted to point out from that discussion is when they were showing the three components of modeling, the first thing that they talked about was the basic problem. And I certainly want to relate that to your course projects. So whether you chose scenario 1, 2, or 3, there is a basic problem and there are basic ideas presented in those scenarios that you want to answer. So everything that you do in your project, we certainly want to make sure are geared towards those problems that were stated in the scenarios. So just quickly to wrap this up with the big perspective here. Again, I don't want to lose track, and I think it was reiterated here, the roles of basic algebra, geometry, and statistics, and how powerful they are with valid assumptions. The role of functions in mathematical modeling, again, that is really kind of the heart of what I want to get to this week, is making sure that we understand that when we talk about models, we're talking about mathematical functions. And certainly there is an entire catalog of functions that are out there to help us model and understand data. And then again, kind of wrapping this back to week 1, the basic concepts we talked about, such as ratios, proportions, and rates. We certainly don't want to lose track of that as we continue to advance here and certainly into this week in functions and data. So I hope this is a good overview and good perspective for the week. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. And again, let me remind you, make sure that you're not losing track of everything that we need to do in order to get these course projects done. Have a super week.